gamers. Welcome back to EPG-Every Platform Gamer, the channel where we cover gaming news and do deep dives across PlayStation, Xbox, Nintendo, PC, all of it. When Marathon launched in March 2026, it arrived with enormous pressure behind it. A high-budget live service gamble from Bungie, tasked with competing in one of the most unforgiving genres in modern gaming. Season 1 proved the core concept worked, but also exposed serious flaws in accessibility, retention, and long-term appeal. Season 2, titled Nightfall, is Bungie's first real attempt to course correct. What follows is a significantly improved, more cohesive version of Marathon, but one still fighting for its life. The most important thing to understand about Season 2 is that it doesn't overhaul Marathon's foundation, it refines it aggressively. Season 1 was defined by a brutal extraction loop. It was punishing, often isolating, and catered heavily to high-skilled players. The steep learning curve became a major barrier, with many players reporting that early runs felt unrewarding and confusing. Season 2 tackles this in several key ways. The introduction of the cradle progression system changes how progression feels entirely. Instead of relying purely on extraction success, unwanted loot can now contribute to long-term stat growth, meaning even failed runs provide value. This alone fixes one of the most demoralizing aspects of Season 1. There's also a full seasonal reset, wiping gear and progression to give everyone a fresh start. While controversial, it creates a level playing field and makes early season matches far more engaging. Combat has been rebalanced extensively, with sweeping weapon changes and new additions refining the sandbox. Combined with a new defensive runner shell, Sentinel, the game opens up more playstyles instead of forcing aggressive, high-risk approaches. Most importantly, Season 2 shows Bungie actually listening. Faster updates, quality of life changes, and clearer systems indicate a studio reacting in real time rather than sticking rigidly to its initial vision. The standout addition in Season 2 is unquestionably Night Marsh, and it's not just a new location, it fundamentally changes how the game is played. Night Marsh is essentially a nighttime variant of the familiar Dire Marsh, but the differences go far beyond lighting. The map trades visibility for tension, becoming something closer to a survival horror experience than a pure extraction shooter. Darkness dominates everything, sightlines are limited, movement becomes cautious, and sound design becomes critical. Bungie leans hard into psychological pressure. Players aren't just fighting enemies, they're navigating uncertainty. New tools like flashlights and signal flares and vector rounds allow players to manipulate light and visibility, but they come with risk. Light reveals enemies, but it also reveals you. That single design choice transforms every encounter into a tactical gamble. Environmental threats also take a front seat. The anomaly distorts the world, obscuring paths and even introducing hallucination-like effects, adding a layer of unpredictability rarely seen in extraction shooters. The pacing is slower, more deliberate. Fewer players and more PvE threats create a tense cat-and-mouse loop that feels closer to Alien Isolation than a traditional looter shooter. Night Marsh isn't just good, it's the most confident design decision in Marathon so far. Despite all the controversy surrounding Marathon, one thing remains almost universally agreed upon: the gunplay is exceptional. Bungie has once again delivered combat that feels precise, responsive, and deeply satisfying. Weapons carry weight, recoil feels meaningful, and time to kill remains sharp without feeling unfair. Even critics of the game repeatedly acknowledge that the core shooting mechanics are what keeps players coming back. Season 2 enhances this further through balance updates and new weapons, ensuring that engagements remain dynamic rather than dominated by a handful of meta picks. If Marathon survives long term, it'll be because the moment-to-moment experience of pulling the trigger is among the best Bungie has ever created, and that's saying something given their history. Perhaps the most telling aspect of Season 2 isn't what is already included, but what's coming. Bungie has confirmed a significant pivot towards PvE-focused content, including a hybrid PvE mode with limited PvP, a fully PvE-only mode planned for later in the season. This is direct response to criticism that Marathon is too punishing and too focused on high-stakes PvP. Game director Joe Ziegler has openly acknowledged that the game game can feel overwhelming and inaccessible in its current form. The experimental sponsored survival mode already hints at this shift, blending PvE structure with controlled PvP intrusion. If Bungie commits to this direction, it could fundamentally broaden the game's audience. There is no avoiding the numbers. Marathon has lost a significant portion of its player base since launch. Reports suggest that the game has dropped as much as 60 to 70% of its players in the weeks following release, with Steam numbers falling from around 88,000 concurrent players to roughly 25,000. Season 2 is clearly designed as a recovery effort. The free-to-play trial week, major system changes, and new content all point toward a push to regain momentum. However, the launch itself was rocky. Server outages and instability disrupted what should have been a major comeback moment, limiting its ability to attract new players. The reality is that Marathon is in a fragile position. It's not dead, but it's no longer safe. From an outside perspective, the answer increasingly looks like yes. Marathon is currently a paid live service title, which creates friction in a genre dominated by free-to-play competitors. Even with a free trial week, the barrier to entry remains higher than it should be. Given the declining player base and Bungie's need to grow the ecosystem quickly, a permanent switch to free-to-play could be the most effective way to stabilize the game long-term. The risk is financial, but the bigger risk is irrelevant. The reaction to Marathon has been deeply polarizing. On the one side, you have players who love the tension, the gunplay and the high-stakes design. On the other, there's a vocal group frustrated with the difficulty. Bungie's broader reputation and perceived missteps in communication and design direction. Some of the backlash isn't even about the game itself, but about Bungie's recent history and declining goodwill among parts of the community. This creates a strange dynamic where Marathon is both praised and criticized intensely, often for the same features. Even after Season 2, several key issues remain. The game still lacks a stable, permanent PvE-only experience, something that could dramatically improve accessibility. The onboarding experience is also still very rough. New players can feel overwhelmed, especially without a consistent team, and technical issues, particularly server stability, undermine confidence in the live service model. Until these are addressed, Marathon will still struggle to retain casual players. Season 2 is exactly what Marathon needed, a substantial, meaningful update that improves nearly every aspect of the game without compromising its identity. Night Marsh is a triumph of design. The progression changes fix major pain points. The gunplay remains industry leading, but the challenges facing Marathon go beyond game design. It is a title caught between two audiences, hardcore extraction fans and a broader market that demands accessibility. Bungie is clearly trying to bridge the gap. Season 2 is a strong step in the right direction. Whether it'll be enough is still uncertain. If Bungie can stabilize the game, expand PvE options and lower the barrier to entry, Marathon absolutely has a future. If not, it risks becoming one of the most interesting near misses in modern live service gaming. Thanks for watching the video. Please like, comment and subscribe, and remember to game anywhere and everywhere.